On this week's NESN Patriots podcast, we will discuss the state of the Patriots as they currently sit at 9-5, and we will preview their upcoming matchup against the Buffalo Bills on Sunday. Hello and welcome to the NESN Patriots podcast. I'm Doug Kai, joined as always by Zach Cox. Zach, how are you doing?
Doing great, Doug. How are you?
I'm doing well, and this is embarrassing to say because I think I told you over the weekend that there's like a hole in my brain about who the Patriots are playing next. And even after asking Bill Belichick about the Buffalo Bills this morning, I was still like, are they playing the Bills or the Jets this week? So I thought I knew that they were playing the Bills, and then in doing our intro, I still had to think about it. But it is Bills week.
It is Bills week. A very different Bills team than we saw 2 months ago. A very different team than... It's a Bills team that probably has a lot of names that Patriots fans or casual football fans in general will have never heard before. But we'll get into the Bills a little bit later.
Yes.
Let's jump into some Pittsburgh action first.
The Patriots lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They
did.
Lost 17-10. And I thought the fan reaction... I think I'm like somewhat obsessed with fan reaction. I don't know why. But the fan reaction to this loss was interesting to me because the Patriots defense outplayed the offense in this game. The Patriots defense only allowed 17 points. Patriots offense only put up 10. When the Patriots defense allows 17 points, the Patriots should win that game. But I thought it was interesting that Patriots fans are so predisposed to complaining about the defense that even after this game, fans are still complaining about the defense. It was like, what did you really want them to do? They shut down Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster for the most part. They definitely weren't great against the run. They allowed, I think, 6.3 yards per carry, something like that. But ultimately, it didn't really matter because they only allowed 17 points. So I think at this point, obviously there are separate concerns about the defense, but the fact that the offense can't put it together on the road might be an even greater concern to me at this point.
Yeah, this seems to be a kind of one of those games where maybe the defense didn't pass the eye test.
Right.
They did get destroyed on the ground. Jalen Samuels, who hadn't rushed for more than 100 yards since high school, I think it was, rushed for 142. They basically just got torn up in the run game for the third consecutive week. But it's not really that surprising that they struggled as much as they did against the run when you look at the personnel that they had out there. They basically played this entire game in dime or nickel, mostly dime. I mean, they had 6-7 defensive backs on the field for pretty much the entire game, especially against an offensive line that's as talented as the Steelers. You're going to expect that unit to get pushed around a little bit. And I think their game plan kind of had its desired effect. Obviously, they want to be a little bit more stout against the run, but they basically... They didn't completely shut down Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster, but they limited them really more than any team has this season. It was the first time all year that those two players had been held below 100 yards combined. I think Smith-Schuster had 40 and Antonio Brown had 48, I believe, and one touchdown that came against Jason McCourty. Jason McCourty struggled a little bit in this game, but Stephon Gilmore, J.C. Jackson, they were both really, really good in this one. And like you said, no matter how you get there, if the defense only allows 17 points, it's hard to pin a loss on the defense.
Yeah, it was funny. They really did a good job of limiting the Steelers' best players, and some of the lesser players are the ones who stepped up, like Jalen Samuels, 19 carries for 142 yards. James Washington had 3 catches for 65 yards. And yeah, the struggles of Jason McCourty do kind of continue here, and it's unsurprising after watching these last couple of weeks that J.C. Jackson has emerged as much as he has. Actually,
J.C. Jackson is a stud.
He really is. Jason McCourty wound up playing every defensive snap. I don't know if we'll continue to see that moving forward, but I mean, J.C. Jackson is the breakout star of this team this season. Really, I mean, as far as over the last few games, he's probably been a top 5 player on this entire team. I think that you'd have to talk about Stephon Gilmore, maybe Trey Flowers, J.C. Jackson, Tom Brady, and like Julian Edelman or something. I don't know. Because like in this game, Rob Gronkowski only had 2 catches for 21 yards. I think that was a little bit concerning. Josh Gordon only had 1 catch for 19 yards.
Had a big drop, too.
Had a big drop. Julian Edelman had a big drop. James White had a big drop. So overall, this offense just really is not clicking, is what this all really breaks down to. And we'll see if they can get it together over the last 2 weeks of the season. But even if they do, they're playing the Buffalo Bills and they're playing the New York Jets. They're playing at home, And nothing that they do in these last 2 weeks, even if they beat both teams 52-0, nothing is going to convince fans or really the media or anyone that this team can do the same thing if they have to play on the road, which is looking increasingly more and more likely, because it would basically take a miracle at this point for the Patriots to not have to play on the road in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I would go that far. It would take a miracle for them to get home field advantage into the playoffs. I could see a Chiefs team losing in the second round of the playoffs to say, I don't know, Pittsburgh or whoever, and then the Patriots.
But that would require the Patriots getting the 2 seed,
but the Patriots getting the 2 seed is still a very real. A very real scenario, especially given how well the Eagles have been playing lately.
Right.
They play the Houston Texans this weekend. So, I guess quick rundown of what the Patriots have to do to get that 2 seed. They have to win out and have the Houston Texans lose one of their final 2 games.
Right.
Or I guess they could win 1 game and then have the Houston Texans lose 2 games.
Which seems unlikely.
That seems unlikely. I don't think it's out of the question at all to have Houston lose one of those games. And if the Patriots lose either of these last 2 games, they don't even deserve to be in the playoffs, basically. Then you could see some really bad things coming for this team. But I still think that it's not totally out of the realm of possibility. I'm climbing over myself with these words right now, for them to get 3 home games in the playoffs. But
miracle was strong, but in order for the Patriots to play all of their playoff games at home, it would be if the Patriots win out, if the Houston Texans lose a game, and then if the Chiefs or Chargers, whoever finishes with the 1 seed, loses in the divisional round. So there are kind of a lot of ifs involved. They're all possible ifs, but it would take a lot of ifs for that to happen.
True, and at this point, it's hard to have a lot of faith in this Patriots team going to, say, Arrowhead in the AFC Championship game, just given how much they've struggled on the road. I mean, it's been widely talked about, but this is the first time they finished with a sub-500 record on the road since 2009. There's a lot of since 2009 with this team. First time they've lost 5 games since 2009. First time they've been below 500 on the road. And if they don't end up getting that number 2 seed, it's going to be the first time that they'll have to play on Wild Card Weekend since 2009. And everybody remembers how 2009 ended.
Right, exactly. I wasn't aware of this, but I mean, I guess it makes sense. The Eagles are actually favored over the Texans.
Nick Foles
on
magic,
Sunday.
man.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Eagles are favored by 2.5 points over the Eagles in Philadelphia. So I was even going to say the most likely scenario would be that the Patriots would have to play 2 games on the road in the postseason. But I mean, Patriots are definitely going to be favored in the last 2 games of the season. The Eagles are favored over the Texans, so I guess I would say that the most likely scenario would be that the Patriots have to play at least 1 game on the road in the playoffs. They're certainly hoping that would not be the case, because the Patriots have been really good at home this season. It just has not translated whatsoever to the road. So, I mean, I hate to say this, but you almost do look at these last 2 games that, like, unless the Patriots lose them, they're almost pointless in teaching us anything about this team. I guess that's tough to say, because if Josh Gordon and Rob Gronkowski and Tom Brady and everyone goes off, that's a good sign, but it doesn't forecast that for the postseason. It doesn't forecast that against better teams once the Patriots actually have to play them when the games really, really matter in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those situations where you'll be able to take away a lot of negatives if the Patriots don't play well, and especially if they lose either of these 2 games. But given the quality of competition, given how much success they've historically had against both of these franchises at home this late in the season, yeah, like you said, they could win both of these games in blowout fashion. And I mean, maybe the Patriots fans will have a little bit more confidence entering the postseason than they currently do now, coming off this 2-game losing streak. But yeah, we're not going to learn any kind of grand revelations about this Patriots team in a positive way in these last 2 games.
I think it's certainly worth discussing I guess the final drive for the Patriots, really what happened in this game is that the Patriots shot themselves in the foot time after time after time after time after time. They had, 14 penalties in the game, which accounted for over 100 yards. They had 5 false starts. They had 3 offensive holding penalties. I think it was 2 defensive holding penalties, including one that came on a running play, which is always
They've had one of those in
strange.
Each of the last 2 weeks, and I honestly didn't even know that was a thing until this season.
It's definitely very bizarre.
Yeah. Seven pre-snap penalties, I think, is the biggest thing to take away from this.
Yeah.
It's like, that's just a lack of discipline. That's a lack of, I don't know if you want to call it mental toughness or focus, but those are that's not a stat that you associate with a Bill Belichick coach team, and it's really surprising to see the Patriots kind of fall on their face in that way, especially because the Pittsburgh Steelers really weren't playing all that well for a lot of this game. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger threw 2 interceptions. Chris Boswell missed another field goal. Yeah. They were leaving the door very much wide open for the Patriots, and usually that's a game that the Patriots win. Especially, I mean, even you look on that final drive, they didn't get into the end zone, but Tom Brady drove them all the way to Pittsburgh's 11-yard line, I believe it was, with no timeouts. I think it was 6 or 7 plays. Then you get a holding call, then you get 3 straight really questionable kind of play calls / decision-making within the play calls, and then the Patriots end up losing. It's a very, very uncharacteristic ending in kind of an uncharacteristic game overall for the Patriots.
Yeah, the Patriots did make it down to Pittsburgh's 11-yard line before Shaq Mason was called for holding. That pushed the Patriots back to 2nd and 15 from Pittsburgh's 21, and they did not move past that point because Tom Brady threw 3 straight incompletions.
All into the end zone.
2 to Rob Gronkowski, 1 to Julian Edelman. A lot has been made that Tom Brady had James White open on 2nd and 15, kind of had him open on 3rd and 15.
Well, he had him open on both plays. On 3rd and 15, he was under a little bit more pressure, so it might have been a little more difficult for him to throw that way.
Yeah, there was no direct. I say he wasn't open on that play just because there was a defender in the direct path between Tom Brady and James White. James White wasn't covered, but Cam Hayward was bearing down on Tom Brady to the point where
couldn't have thrown it directly through his
body. Or he would have had to eat a sack, or he would have got demolished and might not have got the ball off on that play. But I don't know. I mean, it was definitely strange that the Patriots basically ran 4 verts on all 3 of those plays. James White was in pass protection on 2nd and 3rd down, and then kind of cheated out and became the dump-off option, which Tom Brady didn't take. And I don't know. I mean, you can criticize Brady for not going to James White on either of those plays, but on 2nd and 15, you can kind of see where Brady would think, like, okay, this is a decent opportunity to take a chance here. I think my biggest problem was just the throws to Gronk on those first 2 on 2nd and 3rd.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the Edelman one at least was within the field of play.
Yeah.
The 2 to Gronk were out of the end zone and almost looked more like throwaways than they did like actual passing plays. And I guess you live to fight another down. You don't want to throw an interception, but when you only have 3 opportunities to throw it in the end zone, you might as well make at least one of those passes completable.
Yeah, and it's a little surprising that none of those play calls had Edelman or Chris Hogan or somebody just coming across the middle, maybe even post route or a deep dig or something like that. Give Tom Brady some kind of intermediate option to throw in there, because it basically ended up being pretty easy defense for the Steelers, because they just kind of dropped their 6 or 7 defensive backs all back at the goal line, and the Patriots just kind of ran into them, and they didn't even really have to move all that much to defend any of these plays. So it was a little weird that they didn't, especially because they had a decent amount of field to work with, and there wasn't a lot of time left on the clock, but there was like 40 seconds, I think, 35 seconds. So it's not like they're going to be out there kind of lollygagging, but they had time to complete a shorter pass across the middle, get up and spike it, and then kind of have another shot for the shot at the end zone. And it was strange too that Josh Gordon came off on the final play.
Very strange.
Which we asked Josh McDaniels about during his conference call yesterday. Basically said that Cordell Patterson was fresher, so that's why they put him in.
Yeah.
Doesn't really make sense. I mean, maybe Cordell Patterson was fresher because he only played 4 snaps up to that point. Josh Gordon had played all but 4 snaps up to that point. But the Steelers called a timeout before the play.
Right.
So it's not like they were running down the field this whole time. I don't know. It was strange, especially since Josh Gordon is really the only Patriots receiver at this point that you would have kind of a lot of faith in making kind of a jump ball type catch in the end zone.
Odd in general that Gordon was only targeted twice in that game at all. That was, I would think the Patriots would have been able to move the ball a little bit better by targeting Gordon more in that game. I would say that I'm probably, 10 weeks too late on this, but this is the first time that I'm really became concerned, I guess, about the Patriots. I always thought they would finish the season 12-4 one way or the other. I figured that they would win out. You could blame that loss to the Dolphins in Week 14 on the final play. You can blame it on the Patriots' history of struggles in Miami. This game, the Steelers had come off 3 straight losses. The Patriots have always been very good in Pittsburgh. Their defense played well in this game.
Pittsburgh
and they still couldn't come out with a win.
Running back. Yeah.
Right. They had Jalen Samuels at running back. Like, the Patriots really had no business losing this game, and they did. So, I don't know. I was kind of writing off a lot of the losses as we went along there. Okay, the loss to the Titans came before the bye. Maybe they were tired. Loss in Miami, it was hot. They always struggled in Miami. The early season losses, okay, it was Matt Patricia who knew the team well. It was the Jaguars. But this one, there's really no excuse to make for it, except that the Patriots just are not the same team on the road, and they're just very untrustworthy as far as putting everything together. They can't seem to marry the passing offense, rushing offense, pass defense, and rush defense in one game. Maybe we do finally see that over these last 2 weeks of the season, but to this point, they still just, to me, aren't playing up to their potential. I still think this team has a lot of potential. They're not playing up to it. If there's a silver lining here, it's that a lot of the AFC is kind of struggling right now.
Yeah.
The Texans recently lost to who? They lost to the Colts, right?
Colts.
The Chiefs have lost 2 of their last 4.
Chiefs haven't really looked the same since that crazy Monday night game against the Rams.
The Chargers recently lost to, I guess it was like 4 or 5 weeks ago, but they've got a bad loss kind of there in the past. They kept it close against the Bengals a couple weeks ago. They beat the Chiefs. So, the Chargers are probably the hottest team in the AFC, but it's not as if they're without their flaws as well. So the Patriots are just one of many flawed teams in the AFC, and it will be really interesting to see how everything does shake out come the playoff time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard to... I've seen it. You wrote about this today. I've seen other people say it. It's hard. You don't usually see at this point in the season kind of a sense of pessimism or at least like high uncertainty surrounding the Patriots at this point in the year. At almost always, they go into these last 2 weeks, normally against AFC East teams. The games are kind of meaningless. Maybe they'll have to win one of them to kind of lock up a number 1 seed, but they're basically foregone conclusions. And then, sure, they're going to blow out whoever they play in the divisional round, and then, all right, who's up for the AFC Championship game? This year, it's not like that. You cannot, by any means, pencil this Patriots team in for an AFC Championship game berth. You can't even pencil them in for a divisional round game right now. So it's really uncharted territory for this Patriots team. And going back before, it's the kind of thing we haven't seen really since 2009.
Yeah, it's funny. Like looking back at some of the early round playoff games. In 2017. I thought the Titans were like a joke to be playing the Patriots in the divisional round.
We talked a bunch of crap about the Titans that week.
Yeah, they were like, and the game went pretty much as expected, 35-14. I thought the same thing about the Texans in 2016. That game was a little bit closer than the score indicated, but the Patriots still beat them 34-16. Even the Chiefs in the 2015 playoffs, I didn't think they really stood a chance against the Patriots. And then I guess if you go back to 2014, the Ravens played it close in 2014. But, usually early in the playoffs, it's like, okay, the Patriots will breeze through the first team, and then once they get to the AFC conference, the AFC Championship game, maybe that team will put up a little bit of a fight, but the Patriots will probably make it to the Super Bowl. This year, I don't think that confidence will be that high, whether the Patriots are playing in the wild card round or if their first game is in the divisional round when the postseason comes along, just because the Patriots have been, they just haven't been dependable up to this point.
Yeah, they really haven't. They have not inspired confidence lately. We'll see what they do over these last 2 games.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a weird situation, weird times in New England right now.
At the same time, they are 9-5. They're certainly still projected to go 11-5, and a lot of teams would kill to finish 11-5. This is a lot of, the Patriots and their Patriots fans are very spoiled for how well they've done over the last few years. So a playoff berth should have hopes a little bit higher than they are right now, but it's just a weird season.
Yeah, I see that, and it makes sense, but I've seen people say like, "Oh man, Patriots fans are so spoiled. They should be like celebrating like a season in which they won 9 wins." That was kind of like last year when we were going into the Tennessee game, and there were people out there being like, "Oh, people are saying that this game has no juice. Like people are so spoiled around here. It's a playoff game. You need to be up for every playoff game." No, you don't. Not when your team has been as dominant as it has for so long. Standards are just higher around here. That's just the way it is. We kind of knock Patriots fans every once in a while for being unrealistic and kind of overly emotional about a lot of things. But it doesn't surprise me that Patriots fans are kind of freaking out, even though their team probably will go 11-5, just because it's something that hasn't happened in almost 10 years. And just given the track record of success, the fact that at least the two biggest pieces in Bill Belichick and Tom Brady from that entire run of success are still there, it makes sense that people are not kind of celebrating this Patriots team right now.
No, it definitely does. And yeah, given the history of success, that is understandable. One thing that I was just looking at, which is just sort of interesting to me, is that in 8 of the Patriots' last 13 postseason games, they have not gained over 100 yards on the ground. They had games of 46 yards against the Jaguars, 98 against the Texans, 57 against the Steelers, 38 against the Chiefs, 44 against the Broncos, 14 against the Ravens, 57 against the Seahawks, and 64 against the Broncos. The two that really stand out, obviously, are the Chiefs and Broncos from 2015. 38 yards against the Chiefs, 44 against the Broncos. That was the epic Steven Jackson year when they also had Brandon Bolden carrying the ball in the playoffs. It was
the entire offensive line was hurt.
Yeah, entire O-line was hurt. Entire running back core was hurt. So that was kind of an ugly season. But Patriots certainly don't have a major history of doing great on the ground on the playoffs, and we'll see how that continues this year. But the Patriots' rushing attack has been wildly unpredictable game to game, and they haven't really put together a great game for a few weeks here on the ground. So it'll be interesting to see how Sony Michel and the offensive line bounce back in the last 2 weeks. I thought they certainly looked better against the Steelers. The Patriots just weren't really able to commit to the run. But let's get into this game against the Bills because, well, the Bills sound uninteresting. I think it's kind of it could be a fun matchup. I mean, Josh Allen has been, carving up the opposing defenses on the ground. Robert Foster is like the best big play threat in the NFL right now at wide receiver. So this is, you could face a less interesting Bills team. I'd say that.
This is not a good Bills team, but it is definitely, at least in the last couple of weeks, it's been an entertaining Bills team, right, which is something that we don't usually say about the Bills, and we haven't said for a long time. Even when they were in the playoffs last year, they were still kind of a boring overall team. This team is fun. I'm actually excited to watch Josh Allen and see what he can do out here against the Patriots defense that obviously has had its struggles against the run lately and has had its struggles against running quarterbacks seemingly forever.
Yeah.
And Josh Allen did not play the first time these two teams played back in Week 8. I believe he had an elbow injury. He missed a couple weeks due to injury, so we got to see the electric duo of Derek Anderson and Nathan Peterman. But yeah, much more excited to watch Josh Allen out here. I found some crazy stats while I was looking up kind of familiarizing myself with this Bills team. From Week 12 to Week 14, Josh Allen ranks second in the entire NFL in rushing yards.
It's crazy.
Behind Saquon Barkley. That's everybody. That's not just quarterbacks. Overall this season, he's second behind Lamar Jackson in rushing yards by a quarterback. And then you mentioned Robert Foster. This is a guy who barely saw the field for Alabama last season. He had 14 catches as a senior for the Crimson Tide, which probably says more about Alabama than it does about anything. The fact that this guy can be basically a nobody on that team. And now, like you said, he's looked like the best big play wide receiver in the NFL. He was an undrafted guy, was actually on the Bills roster for the first half of the season, then basically didn't really have a role. I think he got cut 2 passes over 7 or 8 games. He got cut, ended up back on the roster in November, and since then he's torn it up. He's averaging 25.8 yards per catch since Week 10, which is by far the most of any player in the any player in the NFL. And he's, even though Josh Allen can't really throw the ball, or he can throw the ball very far, can't throw the ball usually where he wants it to go. Him and Foster have actually been a pretty good tandem. This was probably the most alarming or kind of noteworthy stat that I saw. Josh Allen's completion percentage, which overall is dead last in the NFL. He's a 73.7 completion percentage when throwing to Robert Foster, a 43.5 completion percentage when throwing to anybody else on the Bills roster. So this is
what that tells me? Patriots have to put Gilmore and Jackson on Robert Foster this week.
Yeah, just triple cover him. You might as well.
Let's throw a safety over the top too.
Let Zay Jones beat you with his 23.5 catch percentage or whatever it was last year.
Oh god, that was brutal last year.
But yeah, the Bills receiving core obviously let go of Kelvin Benjamin, Andre Holmes a couple weeks ago. They're kind of rolling with this whole youth movement, and Foster is definitely the number one guy to know on there. All the other guys, Zay Jones, Isaiah McKenzie, Deontay Thompson's in there. They've been fine. They've been whatever, but Foster's really kind of stepped up and sort of made a name for himself in these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I didn't know a ton about Robert Foster. I guess I knew that he was a speedster at the Combine because I follow the Combine stuff a lot. I knew that he wasn't a highly productive player at Alabama for one reason or another, but even just this morning, before talking to Bill Belichick, I was kind of Googling Robert Foster, and he was actually a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. So this is a guy that, he wound up at Alabama for a very good reason. I think he ran a 4.41 coming out of Alabama, had a good 3-cone time. Definitely one of the most athletic wide receivers in the NFL. He's 6'2", 200 pounds. So, he is a tough cover. It's kind of amazing that he didn't have more success at Alabama, but really, before this season, Alabama quarterbacks really only targeted one wide receiver every year, and
basically Calvin Ridley last year.
Yeah, it was Calvin Ridley last year. It was Amari Cooper earlier in Foster's career. So it's not overly surprising that he wasn't, a highly productive guy at Alabama. But to me, Bill Belichick didn't seem to agree this morning. But this speaks to Alabama's depth. That a guy like Robert Foster can be their number 5 wide receiver or whatever he was last season, then come in the NFL and be a team's number 1 wide receiver. It's the same thing as Kenyon Drake when he was at Alabama. I forgot which running backs he was there at the same time as. It was Eddie Lacy and maybe TJ Yeldon or something. Yeah. But, then Kenyon Drake comes in the NFL and he's a starting running back. And he was basically a glorified third down back at Alabama. I know that everyone laughs about, can Alabama beat an NFL team? And the answer is probably no. But if they played 16 games, I don't know. This is me being dumb, but they'd probably win one of them. I don't know. If a 16 seed in the NCAA tournament could beat a number 1 seed, then I kind of think that Alabama could probably beat an NFL team.
Yeah, on most college programs, your Robert Foster level receiver is a guy who has absolutely probably no shot of even playing in the CFL or the Arena League or whatever that team is in Worcester that they play now. The 5th wide receiver on most college programs is not going to be something. 5th wide receiver on Alabama is now a guy who's put up almost 500 yards in the last 5 weeks.
And if Robert Foster had, chosen to play at, I think one of the final schools he was considering going to was Pitt. He might have broken every one of Larry Fitzgerald's records at Pitt. This is a guy that had all the speed, and if he hadn't gone to Alabama, probably wouldn't have gone undrafted. He probably would have been, a player taking the first 3 rounds or something with the speed and the size and everything. But Alabama just has such good depth in there that that players like that can kind of fall through the cracks. And if I'm a team in the NFL, I almost consider using draft picks on guys who didn't play a whole lot at Alabama, because you might be able to find the next Robert Foster. You might be able to find the next Kenyon Drake who can really contribute on a team, but just wasn't quite good enough to play among other first-round picks, basically.
Also, it kind of makes you wonder what the Bills were doing with him for the first 6-7 weeks of the season, because he went undrafted, but he made their opening day roster. He was on the team for really the first third of the season.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they just... I haven't dug too deeply into his kind of playtime stats, but I just know that he was barely used. He was barely targeted, barely had... Yeah, he had 2 catches in those first 4 games that he played in, and then he got cut. So it's strange that a guy can do that, and then he ends up coming back. Normally those guys, if they come back, they kick around in the practice squad for a while. Maybe they get another shot the next year. But now he ends up getting elevated back to the 53, and these games, 105 yards, 94 yards, 27 yards, 104 yards, 108 yards, and he's, like I said, he's averaging more yards per catch than any receiver in the NFL, so it's crazy.
Yeah, it will be actually, getting into the game portion of this, it will be interesting to see how the Patriots do decide to cover Robert Foster, because if his name wasn't Robert Foster, then, based on the last 5 games of his season, you'd probably be talking about Stephon Gilmore covering him. I don't know if the Patriots will, give him that kind of attention, shadowing him with their best cornerback. But, as good as Foster has been, Jackson and Gilmore have been just as good, if not better, over the last, few weeks of the season. So I think the Patriots probably will be able to limit Foster, but he definitely is a big play threat.
Yeah, the one benefit here for the Patriots is this is a very different situation than they faced really like 2 of the last 3 weeks in Minnesota and then against Pittsburgh, where they had a dynamite number 2 over there on the other side. Yeah. The depth chart behind Robert Foster doesn't look too kind of intimidating right now, so they should be able to divert some extra resources to that guy if they feel the need to.
Definitely. Just looking at some stats right now, among qualified wide receivers, Foster leads NFL receivers in deep target percentage. He's targeted deep on 47.8% of his targets. He has the highest catch rate on deep targets at 63.6%, and his yards off deep targets are third only to T.Y. Hilton and Tyreek Hill. So certainly he's been one of the best deep receivers in the NFL.
I honestly think this is the most time that we've spent on any podcast this season devoted to a player on the other team.
Very true.
And it's Robert Foster.
All right, before we get out of here, let's play America's favorite game once with a random player.
All right,
from
you
the Buffalo
get one
Bills.
and I'll get one.
Okay, sounds good. I will ask you where you think that... this is the game where we ask where a random player went to college. I am going to... Where did rookie wide receiver Damari Scott go to college?
The one that I was
That was yours too?
Damari Scott went to Nevada.
I'm going to go with Iowa State. He went to Fresno State.
Ooh.
All right.
I was closer there on the West
You
Coast.
are.
Aren't they both in the WAC, maybe?
I think you might be right there. Do you want to do one more yourself?
All right, I'll take one. Let's see. Where did safety Dean Marlowe go?
Ooh, Dean Marlowe.
I'm going to say Arkansas.
I was going to say Arkansas State.
Oh, all right, let's see. James Madison. Ooh,
James Madison.
A little
wow.
FCS action.
Yep.
All right.
Well, we didn't win this week. I feel like we should have stopped playing once you got, what was his name?
It was Cornell Armstrong.
Cornell Armstrong from Southern Miss. That's probably going to be the only time that we ever actually get one of these. But that will do it for this week's NESN Patriots podcast. I hope you enjoyed all the Robert Foster talk. Might have to redo that intro to say that we're going to talk about Robert Foster for like 30 minutes. But keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage. Follow me on Twitter at Doug Codd. Follow Zach on Twitter at Zach Cox NESN. You might be able to hear our friend Will Benditson because he speaks very loudly and he's talking right outside the door right now. So follow him on Twitter, Patriots Maven, while you're at it.